So today we have a very special video for you guys. We have a product review that I haven't seen anyone really touch on yet from my research. And this product is kind of interesting because it's one of the more pricey third-party add-ons out there that I've seen. There's a lot of third-party add-ons for game consoles, and this one kind of is in a little bit of the higher tier spectrum of what you're going to pay. Typically these will be around 30 bucks, 22 to sometimes 40. This is, I've seen it as low as 50, but I've seen it as high as $65 on Amazon. So it's kind of interesting that this is one of the more expensive ones out there. And with third-party attachments on game consoles, they've been around since the 360 era, and they've always kind of been hit or miss. Some have been really awesome and kind of pull their weight, and others have been really disappointing and can even destroy your system if you're not careful. So whenever you're looking at third-party accessories, you have to kind of do some research on them. You can't just trust them outright. You have to look at them with cautious eyes and go into them with a grain of salt. And today I got sent by KIWIHOME a PlayStation 5 cooling stand. Now they sent this to me, and straight off the bat, they are not paying me to do this review. They are not, doing like a quid pro quo of like, hey, if we send you this, give us a good review. No, they said to me, be as brutally honest as humanly possible, because we like to use reviews as, test dummies to improve our products in the future. And, I can kind of respect that. Using, kind of wanting true, honest reviews of your products so you can make them better. And so, yeah, I kind of like that. I like that they're doing that. So, again, I have not been paid for this review. There's no quid pro quo. They said be as brutally honest as possible, and I'm going to be as brutally honest as possible. So, let's get into it. So straight off the bat, there's this really nifty set of instructions that kind of are real basic to understand, kind of put you through the process. And obviously this is meant to be non-language intensive as humanly possible, which is a good thing. I like that. And man, right away, this feels nice. This feels really, really nice quality. I've seen some, third-party, stands that just feel like complete dog shit. There's this like black one I've seen. It doesn't match with the PS5 at all. And I've seen those for the PS4 as well, and like honestly, I feel like my pinky toe could break those in half. So this, honestly, I feel like if I drop it from this height onto the ground, it's not going to shatter into a million pieces. So that's pretty cool. I like that. Also has this really interesting design of these like sliding doors for the two accessory things, which I'll get into in a little bit. So these don't feel, I'll admit the one door feels a little cheap. It's a little loose, and I feel like if I was to step on it, that it might break. But the other one actually feels a little bit sturdier. It feels a little bit tougher, and so I like that. I feel like you do kind of get somewhat your money's worth out of this if you were to pay full price on Amazon. Another thing is that this if you have a PlayStation 5 with a disc drive or PlayStation 5 Digital Edition, this actually can be converted to digital or to the disc drive version, which honestly, good. It didn't break. So you just basically take this thing out, and now you can use the disc drive version of the PlayStation 5 on this. So that's pretty neat. I like that they gave you the option of both. Alright, so I had to drop the camera down a little bit just so we can actually examine this. So, something I have never liked about the PlayStation 5 is the stand. The way it's set up. Basically, yes, vertically, the stand fits just fine, but it completely covers up these bottom fence right down here. Oh, I really shouldn't be doing this one-handed. PlayStation 5s are super rare right now, and if I break this, I'm not going to be able to get another one anytime soon. Yeah, the stand, I mean, vertically, it's serviceable. It does block, like, all the bottom fence on the bottom, which makes no sense. Like, okay. Right here, you have all these fence on the bottom that really get blocked up by the fan quite considerably. Okay? I mean, the stand, like, blocks it considerably. And then, let's say you want to do this for something, okay? You have to move the thing, like, you have to twist this, and then you have to line it up with these little things. And even when you do that, it still will slide up. There's nothing supporting it in there. And so, like, I've seen some third-party, stands that clip onto one side here, down at the bottom, and it's far more sturdier, it's more visually appealing, and it doesn't just slide off this stand. I mean, clearly Sony was trying to get this design to work with a stand, and this was the best their engineers could come up with, so I can't really fault them for that. But that being said, this could have been better. There's one issue with this that we need to talk about. And the issue is the USB cord. Now, since these third-party aftermarket, add-on things have been coming out since the Xbox 360, they've all used a USB cord that hooks directly into the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox 360, or name the system. And while logically, I mean, let's fit this on here. Okay, so logically, how this works is you just plug in the USB cord here, and voila, the stand is all powered up, and the system will get additional cooling. There's one problem with this stuff. This system, every game console system is designed to have a certain amount of power to make the system run right. So the power brick inside or outside the system is pulling the scientifically specific amount of power to run the disk drive, the fans, the CPU, and it has like a certain power. Let's say it's 10 volts of power. I'm just using this as an example now. So you have 10 volts of power going through here, and then you throw in this USB port to run an additional fan. Well, now that power brick has to run even higher just to get that fan going. So now the power brick is being forced to run at 12 volts instead of 10 volts. If you're an electrician, I'm not using the right analogy, but I'm using this for the layman's terms, okay? Let's say this has 10 power, okay? The power brick's using 10 power, and then you have this USB cord hook into it, and now the power brick's running at 12 power when it was never designed to run that high. And so honestly, a lot of these third-party cords and whatnot do more harm than good. So now you're probably thinking, okay, so all third-party aftermarket things are completely useless. No, there's a simple solution to this. You don't hook the USB cord directly into the console. Now, this is kind of a problem because this cord is really super freaking short. I mean, it's the length of a pen. That's how long this cord is. So, luckily, I can hook this cord right into the USB socket on my surge protector, which isn't draining power from the console, and so the console can continue to run at its standard 10% power, or whatever the analogy I was using, without putting more taxation on the console. That way you can have an additional fan running without the taxing nature happening to said console. And so if you ever look at doing a third-party aftermarket clip-on fan or whatnot, make sure that the USB cord for the third-party device is not hooked directly in the console. It's on a separate power outlet, because you will save your console's life considerably by not doing it. Going on to the look and design of this thing. I absolutely love it. This thing really fits nice with the design of the PlayStation 5. I mean, it feels right with it. Like, I've seen some of the black stands you can get for the PlayStation 5, and it just is so out of style with it. It just does not fit right. Now, one thing I was a little concerned about, and thankfully, KIWIHOME was ahead of me on this. I was concerned that my PlayStation 5 was not going to have the structurally sound nature of the PlayStation 5 stand. Because as much as I don't like this stand, it doesn't have a great design to it, but it does give it a very nice sturdy feel to it. And with this, I mean, it can tip out. So what do? Well, they provide a special screw to screw through the same hole that originally the screw that came with the PlayStation 5 screws through to make the stand more stable. So I absolutely love they added a screw in so that go tip it, it's stable. I love that. So thank you, KIWIHOME, for throwing in a screw. Okay, so one thing I have noticed is that the fan does seem to suck instead of blow. And that was kind of a concern for me because from what I've understood, the bottom vents on the PlayStation 5 actually blow. They don't suck in. So you don't want this blowing against the PlayStation 5 blowing. Grow up, and you making jokes. So I think that actually was a good design. We will do a temperature test to see how this works. I will say, before I add this on, my only real criticism of the body is how easily this falls out. I think this needed just a little bit more grip to it. I mean, I like the idea of the game tray. Because, I mean, there are games that I'm like in the middle of playing that honestly I don't like putting it away on my shelf right away. I don't know, maybe if these were, I don't know, a hair slimmer, that way they wouldn't be flopping around so much. I like the idea of the game tray. I just wish this aspect of the device was designed a tiny bit better. All I'm saying. I do like how if you don't need it though, it just is flush with the device. Now, with the other side, you get 2 charging ports, which is really important because the PlayStation 5 controller is a energy vampire. This thing just drinks and breathes power like crazy. It just runs out of power like crazy because it has 100 different features in it. I'm not going to get into it right now, but so this thing needs to be charged constantly, and how it's designed, go in like this, and that's how it's designed to go in. I mean, so for starters, it seems really damn flimsy. That's how it would look in the port if you were to have the console in. And just like the only thing kind of holding this upright is the little USB-C port right here. And you're resting all of the weight on that one little tab inside here that will charge. So one knock, one pet going by, and you could break your very expensive controller. So I would probably say this is probably the first true negative I have about this. It's just how they have set up the way you charge your controller. Because, I mean, look, will it work? Yes. Is it going to be, you know, something that can charge your controller without having to hook in the cord to this? Absolutely yes. So you can have an easier way of charging your controller now, which is great if you got this thing. It's just, I'm really a little skeptical on the safety precautions of your controller, because the way it's set like that just doesn't feel right to me. It also doesn't look that great. Now, granted, it would not work with this design, so I absolutely get that, but I think it would have looked a lot better if it was something like this, where it's sat up like that. And I mean, honestly, that would look pretty cool. Now the problem is, you can't have that sliding door thing then if you had it straight up. It actually needs it to be kind of like that design. So on that aspect, I'm not going to hold it against them completely because of that. I mean, first off, they designed this stand-like body, and it's a beautiful design. I have to give it that. So honestly, I have a charging thing already for my controller. It's a good, quick, like last resort type thing for charging, but I would say if you are interested in not risking the safety of your controller or controllers, maybe not use this. But I would assume that this charges the controller just fine. I will do a test. Now, one of the questions some people might be asking is, do I desperately need a fan for this? And we're going to get into the practicality of this, because we are going to do a temperature test of this console just running by itself after an hour. And then we're going to do a console test of this running with the fan on. But, like, honestly, how badly does this thing need to be cooled? Because this was already designed to be a really great cooling system. So there's a giant fan right here that sucks in air from the front, and then it shoots it out through the back in a downward angle, kind of like here. And the reason why this system is so freaking big is to help keep it cool. So honestly, I would say from playing this for a long period of time, I felt the side and it's not that hot. It's not that warm. So do you need this as a cooling system? Do you desperately need a cooling system on this? And I would say initially, no, you don't. Simply because this thing is not demanding a lot right now. maybe by the end of this life cycle, when we're seeing games really push the power of the PlayStation 5, then you might want to start looking at getting a cooling fan system. But for games right now that are still running on the PlayStation 4 no problem, honestly, it's not a must. Now, let's say you want a more sturdier stand than this. Absolutely, this is a great product to get. Let's say you want a stand that's more aesthetically pleasing than that or some of the other ones. Absolutely, this stand is the one to get. Alright, so I did a temperature test on this thing while it was running, and I came across some somewhat interesting results. So keep in mind, it's important to know that the temperature test I took is not 100% accurate. There is a margin of error. So if you want to do your own temperature test on this, by all means, go right ahead. This is not necessarily to say that this is exact science. I kind of did the best I could with a temperature reader that's not designed for products but for people, but I did my best. And so the initial test I found was that this thing was about 97 degrees or 97.9 on the side of the system after starting it up and letting it run for a couple minutes. And after running it for an hour, the front got about 96.4, and the cords behind it with the startup was about 93.1 again. And then after running it for about an hour, the cords were around 97.97, so almost 98 degrees the cords were behind the system. Now, once I turned the fan on, I noticed that the base was around 90.3 degrees. The cord behind the exhaust after the fan was on for a few minutes was 97.3. So it dropped from 97.97 to 97.3, which isn't a significant drop. And then I did a few tests straight into the exhaust from the back, and I had one reading 101.4 degrees with the fan on, and then with it off I had it at 99 degrees, which seemed quite significant. So I turned it on again, and it was at 104.4 again. The base fan on, exhaust seemed to go up in temperature, and then I turned off the base fan, play a game on it for a few minutes, and it seemed to have dropped to 101.6 or 104.2, which isn't even 1 degree on that one. So in one testing instance, I found that the system got hotter with the fan on than with the fan off. But on a couple of other instances, I found that the base fan cooled it off by maybe 1 or 2 degrees, sometimes not even an entirely full degree. Now keep in mind, the temperature gauge I was using is not the most accurate. There are better temperature gauges out there. This is just a rough estimate of how the fan works on this. Right now, in 2022, 2023, an additional fan isn't really necessary. Now, probably a fan will be more beneficial towards the end of its life cycle when you're starting to see games really push this system to its limits. Then you might see a good excuse for an external fan. But as of right now, it's kind of unnecessary. And so you're probably thinking, okay, so don't get this. Well, no, I'm not saying that, because you may really like how this is designed with the controller. You may need something to store games right next to the system itself, and for that, I think this is a really awesome device, especially with how it's designed to be minimalistic when you don't need these. When you don't need the charging ports, you can put that in. When you don't need to store games, you can close that. And you can have just this slick stand that's a lot sturdier than the stand you had that came with the PlayStation 5. Now, is that worth $50, $60? That's kind of up to you. Also, another thing worth noting is that this stand does actually allow fencing from the bottom more efficiently than the stand this system came with. So honestly, that's another plus right there. The RGB lighting is pretty awesome. I like that a lot, and I love that this has 3 USB ports. Although I doubt seriously these can run external hard drives to the system. I would say no, it can't. Now, one other thing worth pointing out, this isn't a knock against the product itself, but it is something you need to take into consideration, and that is the floor space of where your console is going. So if you have a vertical console, you have to understand this is another 2.5 inches thick on the front and back, side to side. And keep in mind, you also want to make space for this much room if you want to use the expanded tray for games, or if you want to use the expanded tray for the controllers to charge. I think, honestly, as a stand, this is awesome. It feels like something Sony made, which it is probably mission accomplished when looking at third-party devices. This looks like a part of the PS5. I can't get over that. It is such a slick looking design. It's a better base than what came with the PlayStation 5. So it's kind of up to you if you think the base aspects are worth the price of admission. Now, keep in mind, this probably is going to come down in price on Amazon. It already did come down in price from when I first looked at it at $60. It's now down to $50. So that is something worth keeping in mind. I think this is a pretty awesome product if you're looking for a stand. If you're looking for a cooling fan, from what I've seen, it's not worth it yet. Maybe at the end of the life cycle generation of the PS5, you might see some benefits, but as of right now, the fan's not worth it. It's more for the stand and the accoutrements that come with it. But even with that, I would say the stand and the game holder, and that's really about it. Yes, you can charge with this, but I would recommend getting a different charging technique simply because that's just an accident waiting to happen with your controller. The way they're just being held in by the little tab inside the USB-C port. That just seems like a bad move. I have seen some companies with their stand, they actually have these little magnets that you can take out. You put it in the USB-C port, and then you just put it in. It connects by a magnet, and if it gets knocked off, it gets knocked off. It doesn't damage the little tab. So that would actually be a pretty easy fix for this little issue right here. So anyway, that's been my product review of the KIWIHOME PlayStation 5 cooling stand. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments down below. Do you like how this looks? Do you feel that the fan actually does a lot better job than what I tested it as? Let me know what you guys think. My name's Christopher Connell with 11 Hour Reviews, and that will be all.